Today I'm looking at how the iPhone 13 Pro Max performs in low light shooting situations. The 13 Pro Max got an all-new camera system this year, and two of the camera's lenses are better in low light, and one of them is worse as compared to the 12 Pro Max. The one that got worse is the Tele. It's now an f2.8 as compared to an f2.2 on the 12 Pro Max. This is largely due to it's now a 77mm equivalent telephoto, or a 3x zoom lens. That's good and bad, as the longer reach I found has been nice. It's come in handy, but it absolutely does suffer in low light. By the way, I did a video comparing the two Tele lenses on the 13 Pro Max and 12 Pro Max, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. For the low light test here, I used FiLMiC Pro, shooting ProRes 422. So these are shots of my kids and their cousins swimming in the pool one night. So the original shots are before color correction, and the correction is just a very simple correction, bringing up the levels some. When I shoot in low light, the key is to keep your ISO as low as possible. I always try to shoot for 100, but this was really low light, and so it varied between 250 up to 300 depending on the lens I was using. And this is all just available light. The pool light and then a porch light next to the pool. Now the footage is noisy, but completely usable. And if you've ever shot low light footage using auto ISO, the footage will typically be completely unusable. So overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now I'm going to show it to you again, and this time I used a Denoiser plugin on the color corrected footage. So I used Magic Bullet Denoiser. And on YouTube, you may not be able to see much difference, but there is some. And while it was usable before, this makes it very usable. And by the way, if I was shooting this for something like a movie or a commercial, I would have put other lights around the outside of the pool so that wouldn't go to deep black. Although of course you got to be very careful using any artificial instruments around a pool, especially when it comes to electricity. Battery powered would probably be the best way to go, again, depending on what you're doing and the size of the crew. But now being able to shoot in these lower light type of situations with available light with a phone is pretty amazing. You might have heard that FiLMiC Pro just added BT.2020 ProRes to their app, which is really great. What is BT.2020? Well, more or less it's HDR ProRes, or for people that want to work in the wide color gamut. So that means there are two choices now. There is Standard Dynamic Range, or SDR, which is Rec 709, and now there is HDR, or Rec 2020, also known as BT.2020. If this sounds confusing, well, yeah, it can be actually, especially because you can't play back HDR in an SDR edit. You can conform it to Standard Dynamic Range, though, in post-production, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So this is HDR footage conformed to SDR. And right away, to me, the image just has more clarity to it. And again, we're watching this in Standard Dynamic Range, not HDR, High Dynamic Range. Shooting BT.2020, I also felt like I could push the ISO a little bit higher, and so I did on some of these shots. I think I creeped up to around 600 or 700, which I normally wouldn't do, but it seemed to hold pretty well. I still brought it down from what the phone wanted to do. It wanted to be like at 2500 ISO, and that would be way too noisy. Now here's the same edit with noise reduction added to the correction. So shooting with BT.2020, and then this is the wide lens that has an f1.5 aperture, is really a great way to go if you're shooting in low light. Is it perfect? No, not at all. But again, this is a phone and it looks surprisingly good. And yeah, there is noise and the image gets soft because it's higher ISO, but it's very usable footage for sure. Now, of course, it's not quite a Sony mirrorless camera, and if you were really doing this, that may be a better choice, but it's great to know if you are shooting with your phone in this type of scenario that you can get decent images. And especially compared to just a few generations back, like the iPhone 11 Pro Max, I wouldn't even attempt this. All right, last thing I'm going to show is some bonus footage that is not low light, but it is ProRes 422 shot with FiLMiC Pro, and it's my pool shot during the day instead of night. I also show some before and after color correction, and on this I additionally did grading, color grading, versus just the simple corrections I did on the previous footage. I shot this the next morning after the night footage, and I had heated the pool, and it was a chilly morning, and so I got this really great fog or steam, almost looks like smoke coming off the water. I absolutely love that kind of added production value. I threw in a few macro shots here and there too, which I really like that aspect of the ultra-wide lens now. And this was morning time around 7:45, and so I graded it looking more warm, because that's actually how it looked. I shot this with auto white balance locked, and so I didn't use a daylight preset. But I think the warm vibe works pretty well for the golden hour type look. Again, I really just love that foggy look rolling across the top of the water. Almost looks like I added it in post-production, but it is totally real. I shot ProRes 422 here, and I feel like it held up well, especially adding a grade to it. Looks pretty good. And this last shot is another macro shot, which really doesn't look like a phone shot to me. And then I have one last BT.2020 shot that I did. Again, this was conformed to SDR. And I think it looks pretty great. I'm really impressed with what you can do with the 13 Pro Max in low light. I'm getting to where I'm not really afraid to shoot with it in those scenarios. In the past, I would probably never do that. And now adding in ProRes BT.2020, it's pretty crazy what we can do with phones today.